Okay. So anyway, y'all, this is just continuing, like I said, the notes. As I said, I'm not going to get into the debate, Columbus good guy or Satan, whatever. But if you look at these comments from his journal, you see that really he sees these Indians as not much of a threat. And notice this phrase here, with 50 men, they can all be subjugated. Please make sure you know what the word subjugate means. What does a submarine do? Go submerges. It goes underwater. Okay? Subjugate means to put people under you. It's a term you see in your AP curriculum. They could be made to do what is required of them. So already by this, it's pointing out that Columbus sees these people as somebody vulnerable. The story is, y'all, they came up and they even cut their hands on his on the swords and things like that. They had nothing like that. And so they were quite innocent. They kind of reminded him of children. Now, Columbus is going to set off a series, like an explosion of exploration, y'all. The Spanish are mainly down here in the south, right? Coming down to the Caribbean or whatever. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, good, good. Let me show you kind of where we are here. Now, my kids did not get the summer assignment,
Okay.
so we're like a week behind.
I love that for y'all.
Yeah, isn't
I
that
wish
great?
my kids were.
So anyway, we are still going through the Columbian Exchange
Love
here.
it.
Isn't that great? So
Yeah.
here's my exciting notes. So anyway, we're like right around that. Sorry, that's like my Fritos from lunch.
I was like, somebody has to take
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah. So there we go. So anyway, y'all, there's this massive explosion of exploration. And what we're looking at here, y'all, we'll be going through these starting on Thursday, talking about the different types of colonization and everything, making our way through there, and you'll be expected to compare different types and their methods and that kind of thing. All righty. So the conquistadors. Now, this is where your notes, where we really kind of start. I think the video I made for you guys where I talked about these ended right around here, where we were going over these folks. The 3 Gs. You guys have heard that ad nauseum, but it's not a bad tool. If you guys have to talk about reasons for Spanish and other exploration, the 3 Gs is a great way to organize it. You guys remember them, right? What's the first of the G's? Well, any order, yeah, God or gold, right? You got gold. I took that picture in my closet this morning just to make sure you guys know what it is. Glory, right? Good old conquistador there. And finally, you got God. So, and of course, this is from the famous Michelangelo Sistine Chapel picture. All right, now, the Aztecs. Now, it might seem kind of weird for y'all that we would talk about the Aztecs, which are from Mexico, in a U.S. history course. But what happens to the Aztecs, y'all, is sort of like a preview. It's like the trailer you guys get at the movies for what's going to happen to the Native American groups time and time again. So you have Cortez versus Montezuma. Now, remember, spellings can vary. On that district test y'all took, remember, it's spelled Moctezuma with a C, but it's the same guy. Cortez can sometimes be spelled with an S or a Z or a Z, okay? You see it up here with an S. So what I want to do here, y'all, is go through, and I thought I had the book come up here. Let me see here. There we go. Now, the big reason, y'all, why the conquistadors, these conquerors, were able to defeat, okay, that they were able to defeat the Indians so well was basically better weapons, the guns part, disease, the germs part, and finally steel weapons that they had. Mr. Janis used to have students read this during the summer. It's a tough read, but man, it is good, and it really encapsulates, and it's an easy way for you guys to remember. Just like the 3 Gs, in this case, guns, germs, and steel. Good way to arrange it. Now, the Indians, y'all, and remember last week I showed you guys that Aztec sacrificial knife, okay? It was made out of that obsidian, that glass stuff. Now, imagine what would happen if a steel sword were to hit that. It would shatter. I mean, right? The Indian armor, if they had it, was made of leather. The Spanish, what kind of weapons did they have besides steel swords, y'all? Guns, like real guns, muskets, okay? And this has been poo-pooed and number two has been poo-pooed a lot. That's the official term for it, for saying that, you know, the Indians believed that Cortez was a god. But there were some that really believed that, and it's not as silly as you think, because there was a legend, y'all, that the Indian god Quetzalcoatl, right? This guy was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, had a blonde beard, had sailed east and had left, and he promised to return in the year of the reed. The year of the reed happened to be 1519. Now, Montezuma, the Aztec chief, he probably knew, this guy's not really a god, but hey, I'm going to hedge all my bets. And so Montezuma, y'all, put together a big treasure, gold and silver and jewels, and sent it to Cortez when he heard this guy had landed, hoping that that would satisfy him and he would mosey along and go away. But instead, y'all, what do you think it did to Cortez when he saw all this gold and silver? Made him greedier. I mean, he thought like, man, if they're willing to give this much stuff to get rid of me, think what they must actually really have. Now, this is also going to be a problem. And once again, y'all, I mentioned this thing called presentism, where we think people today are just like people back then. But they're not, y'all. I mean, today, you and I, there's a lot more of this kind of identity people have based on their ethnicity or their race or where they're from or whatever. And so it's surprising to a lot of people that Indians fought Indians, right? But they didn't have this like Native American solidarity or anything. A lot of Indians fought and hated each other. And there was nobody hated more, y'all, than the Aztecs, because the Aztecs, there's that word again. You need to add it to your vocabulary. I showed it already earlier today. Subjugate. Force you to do their bidding. Tribute. Does anybody know what the word tribute means? If you have to pay tribute, what do you have to do? You got to give something to them. And the Aztecs, what do you think the Aztecs wanted? Sacrifices, people to sacrifice, and gold and silver as well too. This does not make you the most popular of the Indians. And so when Cortez lands and says he needs help against the Aztecs, man, the Indians are like, sign me up, dude. Sign me up. We hate those Aztecs. And also too, y'all, the way the Aztecs fought. Aztecs didn't fight like Europeans. Europeans, y'all, they fought for keeps. I'm going to kill you, and if I can't kill you, I'm going to wound you. Aztecs wanted the people to be captured. Why? Sacrifices again, okay? Now, so that's not really good in a war unless the other team agrees on the rules. I'll fight to capture you, you fight to capture me, it'll be awesome. But if one side fights to kill, it ain't going to work too well. Now, the biggie, the germs part of the guns, germs, and steel story is disease. Smallpox. Ironically, smallpox is the largest killer. I'm glad we don't have large pox, because that would be even worse. But anyway, y'all, and I'm sorry it's hidden here by the little sharing thing here from the recording that I'm making of this. But anyway, y'all, why it's important to remember the Aztec story is when we go over King Philip's Armada-Com's War, when we go over Pontiac's rebellion, Tecumseh's rebellion, Pope's rebellion, it's basically the same story again and again. The European weapons went out. Maybe there's the God thing, but not necessarily. But definitely, the Indians, y'all, they always talk about the reasons they got defeated were like the 3 Ds. Disunited, and they were disposable, and disease, okay? Now, Indians, like I said, they didn't have this kind of thing of Indians, let's all join together. They would try it, but every time they tried it, y'all, it was always too little and too late. You know, and when we look at the Native Americans, we say, man, well, what's the deal? Why didn't they just drive those Europeans off into the water as soon as they showed up? Once again, they saw the Europeans as somebody they could use against their own enemy. That was more important. And so lots of times, I know in the past, we always kind of like, man, why didn't they just kill them all? Really recently, we really look a lot more like Indians knew what they were doing. It's a term that we'll talk more about called agency. They had more power and control over their situation than people often think. Now, Columbian Exchange, here's your AP concepts, right? Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I watch the news at night, you know, they use hyperbole, these crazy inflated this crazy inflated language so often on the news, and they'll tell some sad story, and they'll say the little town will be changed forever. And I'm like, really? I mean, it's a sad story, but is it really going to be changed forever? Because forever's a long time. This is one thing, though, y'all, that really needs that forever change. The world was revolutionized, not strong enough word for what happens here. Now, here's a word, demographic. We're going to go through that word here in just a sec. And the big idea, what I want you guys to get, because so often you guys know about Columbian Exchange, but what you need to know is, was it positive? To what extent was it more positive, say, for Europeans than it was positive for Native Americans? To what extent was it more negative for Europeans than it was positive for that? You need to be able to talk about those, okay? And so I'm going to have you guys think about that, and we can talk about that on Thursday. So let's go through it, and I apologize for this map being fairly small here. The way the Columbian Exchange works, right? The exchange of plants, animals, and disease. And really, it's more than that, y'all. It's in economics. It's all kinds of different things going on. But when we look at this, y'all, the Americas, North and South America here, we mainly supply plants. One exception, turkeys. And I don't know if you guys know this, but America is still supplying a lot of turkeys to the world. And I'm not talking the bird variety. But anyway, here, we have all of these. We have pumpkins, squash, turkeys, peanuts, potatoes, tomatoes, corn, sweet potatoes, peppers. Imagine life without jalapenos, y'all. Tobacco. I'd like to imagine life without that. Chocolate, beans, vanilla. That's just some of those, y'all, that came over from the Americas, North and South America. So what did Europe, what did Asia, what did Africa give up? Okay, and well, obviously, onions, citrus fruits, oranges, lemons, grapes, bananas, sugar cane. Better for honey. All right, see you. Now, I'm going to take you guys through this here. Let you see this for just as well. Actually, go past that. Here we see some of the things going across. Now, specie is gold and silver, y'all. Europeans give, here you go, look at that same chart. Anybody ever heard of a band called Pink Floyd? All right, awesome. This is the song Wish You Were Here. And a student took that song and did a Columbian Exchange version of it. I saw Pink Floyd, the Australian Pink Floyd, Saturday night, and it was pretty impressive. They did a really good job on it.
Columbian Exchange. Never fools, resources, trading throughout the world. From Europe and smallpox, horses and guns. Countries never showed they were number one. They wanted more money. And God slaves do their will.
Now, this obviously focuses more on the negatives. Now, disease is a big thing, y'all. Biggie is smallpox again. Okay. And, man, that could be a rapper. Biggie Smallpox. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So we have all this. We mentioned corn, all that. Now, most of the diseases come from Europe. But the Indians did give one back to Europe on their own. Syphilis. The gift that keeps on giving. What is syphilis? It's a sexually transmitted disease. You have relations with somebody, you pick it up, and you get sores all over you. Sores especially where you don't want there to be sores. Okay? It's the gift that keeps on giving. We don't really see syphilis in Europe until after exploration commences, and then it goes all over. And what would happen is the men brought it back. Hi, honey, I'm home after going to the Americas, and boom, she would get it. The men might go fight in wars, spread it to other women and things like that, and it made its way all through Europe. So the Indians did get some revenge, y'all. All right, disease. Now, here is what smallpox looks like. Monkeypox, ironically, apparently looks somewhat similar. The thing that's out there now. Now, smallpox, for the most part, y'all, has been eradicated from the world today. Sadly, in some parts of the world where they're questioning some of the smallpox vaccinations, you're seeing some of it start to come back, like in Afghanistan and places like that. The pox, y'all, puts these little pustule-like things all over you. And either when they bust or absorb, they leave little pits, little like indentations. George Washington had it, and like a lot of the English and Europeans, it was miserable and does kill some, but not like it killed Native Americans. Now, one of the numbers that you guys need to know that is often thrown around, in fact, in ACDEC yesterday, we mentioned this very number. The disease rates go as high as 90%. In other words, there's about, 12 of you in this class? 1.5 of you would be dead. Or maybe 1 1/3 would be, all but 1 1/3 of you would be dead. Take it back. So like 1 and like 1/3 of y'all would only be the ones that make it. When perhaps the biggest killer, it was the biggest killer by any means. Okay? Now, I do want to mention this so-called biological warfare thing, because this is also something that's discussed quite a bit. Now, they didn't have our complex understanding of germs that we do today, but they did understand that sick animals and sick people could spread disease. And so in objects that sick people and sick animals had or been on might be able to spread the disease as well, too. So going back to medieval times, y'all, there were stories of people introducing infected animals into camps of their enemies, into their villages or castles and stuff like that. So Europeans, y'all, have been accused of intentionally doing this once they knew that they carried these diseases and once they knew the Indians had a hard time with it. Ironically, too, y'all, we know that even in our time, there have been accusations that Brazil and some of your South American countries have used disease to try to wipe out Indians so they could get that parts of the rainforest. And I hate to say it, but in the United States during the Civil War, there is evidence that the South considered, y'all, sending smallpox-laden blankets to people up north. And those people might get infected, and there might be a big outbreak of smallpox up in the north that would help the South, obviously, in their war. Now, the term you guys need to know is demographics. Now, that's the population explosion. I don't know if you heard it. Okay. Just kind of having flashbacks 27 years ago. But anyway, y'all, demographic. What does the word demo mean? And I don't mean like, yeah, man, we've got this really cool demo for my band, Bloody Flux. You need to come and hear it. That's the name of my punk band I have, y'all, Bloody Flux. Demonstration, yeah, but in this case it means people. In this case it does mean people. So demographics is the study of people, or better yet, population. Now I know some of you had Miss Locklear and you guys did population pyramids, right? Population pyramids, where you basically ranked the young population. If it was fat on the bottom, that meant the population was very young. If it was fatter at the top, it meant an old population. You put men on one side, women on the other side. Those little pyramids that are usually black and white. That is part of demographics. So the Columbian Exchange, y'all, is going to change population forever here. Now, ironically, while Native American populations were dropping by as much as 90%, and it uses the word decimate, and I wish I hadn't used that word, y'all, because what does deci mean? 10. If you decimate, you get rid of 10% of the people. Is that an accurate term for what happened to the Indians? No, we need something like 90% mate, okay? Because, and it came from, and this is weird, y'all, back in the Roman days, when sometimes Roman legions wouldn't accomplish what they were ordered to do, the commanders would have the men draw lots. And every 10th man in a unit would be killed. And you go, man, that's strict. Why would they do that? To encourage the others to do better. And that was called decimation of a unit, decimation of a legion. So the Indians actually had worse than decimation. They dreamed of decimation. Man, I wish we just had decimation instead of what they're doing. Now, the crops from the Americas lead to this population explosion, not just in Europe, y'all, but also ironically in Africa. And so the thing is this, y'all, we haven't talked about this term yet, primogeniture. But primogeniture, y'all, is everything goes to the firstborn son. Now, I don't know what y'all's family situation is, how many brothers, sisters you have. But when your parents pass away, how are they probably going to divide up what they have, the house and land and stuff? Evenly, right? Or maybe the youngest, okay. Guess how they used to, or give it to me, right? What did they used to do in Europe? The oldest son got everything. It was called primogeniture, and it's one of the big reasons people come over here. Now, why would you do that if you have like 5 kids? Because think about it. If I divide everything I have by 5, and then each of those kids divides everything by 5, and then each of those kids divide it by 5, pretty soon it's going to be like, son, when I die, the square land is going to be yours. Okay? I mean, it's really kind of sad. And so the idea was give everything to the oldest. That way the estate, farm, whatever stays in one person's hand. But what about brother 2, 3, 4, and 5? You know what they get? Jack. Nothing. Okay? So what did they have to do? They had to join the army. They joined the priesthood. Or, guess what? They come to America. America is going to attract them. Land was available for the second and third and fourth born sons, y'all. Also, jobs were available for them. Europe just way overpopulated. And ironically, y'all, so did Africa. And those African people are going to be enslaved and brought over here. And there were more of them because of the Columbian exchange. So as Indians are dying, European African populations are growing. Okay, kind of ironic, don't you think? Like rain on a wedding day. Oh, anyway, sorry, I went into my Alanis Morissette phase there. So there are demographic changes. Now, one of them, this is definitely a negative consequence for Africa, is going to be the so-called Middle Passage, of which you guys will hear a lot of. Now, the triangular trade, and do you see why they call it triangular? Because it looks kind of like a drunk triangle. What would happen, y'all, is Europe would supply foodstuffs. Not food necessarily, it might supply some food, but mainly it'd be gold, trinkets, even alcohol, guns, steel items, tools to Africa. And Africans would supply and trade for people. Okay? Now, once again, you get some students like, man, Mr. D, that's just wrong. Africans trading Africans, you can't be doing that. Once again, that's you and me putting our idea of, racial solidarity. They didn't have that. All they cared about, y'all, was getting their stuff. And if they had to kidnap people from another tribe or people that they defeated in war, they didn't think about it as a bad thing. So they cooperated and they supplied people. And then if I zoom in here, this is the Middle Passage from Africa to the West Indies and sometimes to the Americas. Now, slavery, y'all, sadly, has been with us from the beginning. Whether it was people in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, talk about it. The Greeks who supposedly invented democracy, the Romans who invented republican government as we know it, they all had slaves. But what was different, y'all, it was fellow Europeans were slaves. Maybe some people from the Middle East, but rarely were they Africans. The Portuguese, as they start making their way down Africa to find a way around to get over to the Indies, they start getting people. And then what they do is, as sugar becomes popular, they begin to set up sugar plantations or sugar cane plantations. Now, these will be later copied, y'all, in the Caribbean and later be copied in South Carolina, okay? These sugar plantations. Now, the original peoples there, much like what would happen in happen in the Americas, the original inhabitants, y'all, died out fairly quickly or were killed. and then people were brought and enslaved. I try not to use the word slave, y'all, but I will sometimes, because what's sad is, a lot of people are like, well, when they call you a slave, it's like that's all you are, right? You're a person who's been enslaved. So I try to use some other words, but you'll see everybody else still use that, the old one. So the first boatload, literally, of Africans will come over here in 1518, the year before Columbus, not the year before Columbus, the year before Cortez, y'all, lands there in Mexico. So it's been happening quite a while. Now, this last picture here, y'all, talks about this begins the kidnapping of these Africans from Europe, from Africa. Man, I'm getting tired, y'all. My lesson today is going to be awful after school if I keep this up. Now, if you look at this here, the size of the arrow, y'all, is indicative of how many people. Where did most of the African enslaved people go, y'all? South America, particularly Brazil, the Portuguese. A lot of them went to the Caribbean. What's this? That's the amount that actually came to what becomes the United States. It's interesting, too, though, because you also see that some people were also made or enslaved and taken to and work in northern Africa, like in Egypt or what is today Libya. Some made their way to be slaves or enslaved people in what is today Saudi Arabia or Iraq and Iran. It's a rotten business. And once again, a lot of us like to think people have always been the same. We love, we hate, we want to have children, we like having a good time, all that kind of thing. And maybe some of that is the same. But these people, y'all, believed it was okay to enslave people. They justified it. I don't get that, but hey, they were different, and they believed it was all right. Now, the next thing here, y'all, is improvements in technology. We get the compass. I mentioned that in the video I already recorded for y'all. We get the astrolabe. We get the sextant. These allow you to predict your longitude. We get the caravel ship, okay? And as you'll see in the lesson that I'm going to record, we also get what's called the joint stock company, the modern day corporation. And what's going to happen is feudalism, which I'm about to talk about here, is going to be replaced by mercantilism. And mercantilism, y'all, is something we're going to be talking about for about the next month, off and on, because it's one of the principal economic causes of the revolution. All right, now, feudalism. What is it? It was a system, y'all, where wealth and status was determined by land. Now, at the very top, and I gave you guys a little picture here. At the very top, you got the king and the queen, who essentially own most of the land. Now, they give what are called fiefdoms, okay, or land to the church, right? And to various other people, maybe princes, dukes, lords, you name it, okay? Marquis, whatever. They had all kinds of names for these various nobles or aristocrats. In return, these people gave land out to the knights in return for the knights fighting for them, defending them, that kind of thing, okay? And then at the bottom of the thing, y'all, were the so-called serfs. I'll come back to that in just a sec. The so-called serfs or peasants. Peasants, y'all, had no rights. Their job, they were essentially like enslaved people in the sense that they could be bought and sold. They just couldn't pack up and move and go somewhere. They were literally tied to the land, okay? And so these peasants, as some people called them, or serfs, were at the very bottom. They did the work, they farmed the goods, and then they gave them to the knights. The knights shared some with the nobles shared some with them. That's how the system worked. What's ironic, and it never occurred to me until this morning, was after the American Civil War in the South, we kind of go to this system. A lot of African Americans, former enslaved people, now called freedmen, and also poor whites will be forced to do what's called sharecropping, where basically you don't own the land, you borrow the land, and the guy who owns it, you have to give him maybe half of your crop because he's letting you use it. In a sense, we went back to it. Now, I'm just going to show you a little brief video. This is from, what's the movie? History of the World Part 1. And this will give you an idea maybe of how kings felt about the peasants. Here we go, or the people.
Your Majesty, I must have a word with you. The Count de Money. Don't correct me. What is it? Oh, Your Majesty. I've come on the most urgent business. It is said that the people are revolting. Senators, speak on us. Oh, Your Majesty, this is a very serious problem. The peasants, you have no regard for them. What? I have no regard for the peasants. They are my people. I am their sovereign. I love them. Oh! Drifting to the left. Your Majesty, the situation is worsening. The peasants may grow violent. Yes. I hate violence. The one thing I detest, violence. I abhor it. Oh! Felt like a scope.
There you go. That's obviously an exaggeration, but kings didn't feel a whole lot for the peasants, obviously. Now, and this chart here, y'all, just kind of shows you, it's on your paper as well, showing you where the kings, the nobles, and all of them ranked. Peasants down here, of course, supplied food. They supplied services to the knights. The knights provided then protection and also shared some of that food with the nobles. And in return, the nobles and others gave money and knights and all of that stuff to the king. But the king and his wife, the queen, were the ones that shared the land, and gradually that's how this system worked. And it does work, y'all, for several hundred years. But it's going to change and be replaced with mercantilism. So as a result, y'all, of this exploration, and the exploration is going to, be propelled also by it, kind of like what comes first, mercantilism or, exploration. But what happens, y'all, is all of this bullion, and bullion is a fancy word for silver and gold. All of that stuff, y'all, is going to be valued more than anything. Whereas land was the key. Now it's silver and gold. Now, why silver and gold? Because silver and gold, y'all, could be used to build armies and navies, to get ships and make yourself powerful.
Silver and gold, silver and gold. Everyone wishes for silver and gold.
How do you measure its worth?
Just
By the pleasure it gives to the earth. Oh, sorry. Okay. So anyway, y'all, bullion, gold and silver, could buy armies, ships, sailors, which were needed. Now, the gold, and like I said, we're going to be talking about this off and on, was to keep the gold and silver at home. If you bought stuff, let's say you're England, and you buy stuff from France, you have to send them your gold. You have to send them your silver, which means you have less of it. That is until this cool invention called colonies. Now, with colonies, you can get serious money. Right, John Gonzalez?
Yep.
You know the song?
Money.
By Pete Floyd. There you go. All right. They actually showed this at the concert on Saturday night. So, what would happen, y'all, is this is going to drive the competition. Because if you get colonies not only provide gold and silver, right? But they provide raw materials, fur, wood, trees and lumber and stuff like that. And then they provide food to feed your people, okay, like fish and stuff. And then they will provide markets for the country that controls the colonies, the so-called mother country. That's all the things that money will buy. Now, this is kind of an early form of capitalism, y'all, and it is, of course, the economic system we have today, where money allows you to buy the things you're seeing in that video, the gold, the silver that we have. Keep your hands off of my stack. All right, so there we go. So anyway, y'all, and then the last thing we'll look at here is a cartoon that does a good job of showing how this works. here you have the mother country. Some people today call it a, what do they call it? A parent company or parent country, whatever. But anyway, I still call it mother country. Now this queen or whatever represents, say, England. And what are the colonies providing? Bullion, gold and silver to her, okay? They're providing the foodstuffs to feed her people, and they're providing the raw materials. But this is the interesting thing. You send them the fur, you send them the lumber, you send all these things, and then the colonies, you send that stuff all back to Europe. Europe makes it into what are called final goods or finished goods, like chairs and hats and all of that. And guess who has to buy them at the prices you dictate? The colonies. So the colony system, y'all, which was driven by mercantilism, was a money-making machine. The gold and silver stayed within the system, either in the colonies or more likely back in the mother country. You didn't have to buy your food or raw materials from other countries. And so mercantilism, if you guys are looking for an economic reason, this is the gold in the gold, glory, and God part of the thing, okay? All righty, I think that's about it today. I think it's almost time to go. I'll try to put this PowerPoint up without the videos and stuff for y'all. I'm also going to try this afternoon to record the last part of this so we can move on and try to get caught up where we need to be. All righty, let me go ahead and stop sharing here. Y'all have a great day. Good timing, Mr. D. How about that? Awesome.